way this week, I figure I'd just keep continuing on with the events surrounding the return of Christ. So the slide will be up here shortly, but last time we did this, we pretty much got up to the point where the trumpet's been blown, the faithful have been gathered together. I presented that we're at Sinai, and now we've got to go through the process of judgment. So I put to you that it's a two-part process. Just do a reset on this. It's a little loose. It's not the end of the world if it doesn't work today. Two-part process. So we would have some sort of a... Thanks. Some sort of a discussion with the angels. We talked about the Book of Remembrance, and the other book would be the Book of Life, which we'll get to as we go through the process. But the Book of Remembrance, we could suggest that, we have a record of our lives in there, and so the angels would have some sort of a discussion with us there about certain things that we've done throughout our lives. And then at the end of that, we would be split up into two groups, most likely, and then we would sort of come before Christ. So Romans 14, 10 through 12 says, "For we shall all stand before the judgment seat of Christ, for it is written, as I live, saith the Lord, every knee shall bow to me, and every tongue shall confess to God. So then every one of us shall give account of himself to God." Okay, so that's where we get that idea. Do we have a mic runner, and we'll do some readings as we go through? Yeah. So let's somebody read 1 Corinthians 4.
"Until the Lord come, who both will bring to light the hidden things of darkness and will make manifest the counsels of the hearts, then shall every man have praise of God."
All right. So kind of like part of the process of the judgment is to make manifest the counsel of the heart. So God's looking for people with the right heart to be immortal saints, to be Christ's government, and to rule the world for 1,000 years, with the intent that ultimately all human beings on earth will eventually be immortal without sin, right? So you've got to have the right heart for that. And obviously there'll be people at the judgment seat that are not really interested in that. So then we had talked, any discussion so far on that? We'll look at a lot more verses as we go through. So if you have a comment, just raise your hand and we can chat about this on the way through. So Casey, I think, had said in one of the classes, like, I don't really want to know your dirty secrets or what have you, but this is part of the reason. What's that? Sure. Right. But the idea being that we don't go into the kingdom age with unresolved issues, right? And so here's some good examples of that where David's obviously going to be happy to see Jonathan at the judgment, but Uriah is going to be there as well. And so David and Uriah have to sort of make amends for what happened there. Paul and Stephen would be another good one, right? And so we had said that's why Christ is telling us, deal with your problems now on this side, and then there's no problems to deal with when we get there. Yes, Rebecca?
I just think that makes an interesting point. Like, David knew what he did to Uriah, but Uriah doesn't know that David did that.
Right, yeah. Yeah, it's uncomfortable.
Will
right?
it be talked out? Do you think that will be talked out? Do you think that will be revealed? Or Uriah just thought he died on the battlefield? He may never know, right, that David did it?
Well, he will know because we've all read it 100 times, right? So, and I'm sure David will run up to Uriah and like drop to his knees and say, I'm sorry, brother, you know, I did these things to you. Christ says to us, if you've got a problem with your brother, you know, sort it out before you come and take the bread and wine. And let's talk about that because yeah.
That's an important point about the remembrance, that this is part of the mind of the Spirit is going to take over. So the mind of the flesh is going to be a foregone.
Right.
So we're going to see things different. We're going to be different.
Yeah.
So I think I'm glad you brought that verse out.
Yeah, so in conversations with people over the years, there's a lot of people that think that somehow our minds and our memories are going to be erased. But I think it's the opposite. Like the disciples had total recall of everything that Jesus ever said to them, right? And that's part of the reason that part of the way that they were able to recall the things that are written in the Gospels. I think we will have total recall. When it says that the former things won't be remembered, it's like it says that they won't learn war anymore. So I was talking to a guy through the week that he went to war college, where this college is all about learning war. That's something of this age that will be forgotten. There won't be any war colleges. There won't be any, some of the other horrible things that we have in society won't be there. The saints won't allow it, and they won't be remembered. But I think it's very important that we all keep our personalities and we all keep the experiences that we learn as we go through life. And we do learn a lot, right? We grow as we get older and go through more experiences. And those experiences, I would suggest, are what we're going to use in the kingdom age to help the mortal population get through their problems, right? Casey? Does that answer, Rebecca? No. Right. Right. But Jesus remembered them perfectly, right? So he's immortal. It's not like when he, in John 21, but I mean, it says that we're going to be like him. What's the point of us getting immortality and me forgetting who Randy is? Right. So everything that we're learning as we go through life now, like if I were, and we all have our individual challenges, if I were struggling with being an alcoholic, but I overcame, the wisdom and knowledge that I've gained through going through that trial in my life, I can then use to help people in the kingdom that are having the same issues. And I think that's the whole point of everything that we do in this side of the kingdom, is in preparation for what we do in the kingdom. But God knows each of us intimately, and the idea that we would have our memories erased just doesn't make any sense at all. Whereas getting rid of war college and those other things.
I really think the most important part for me is I try to work out these things now.
Yeah.
We know when we've offended somebody, it's harder than to regain a city. So this is the important part about us now. As far as the remembering part, I think he's really talking about the remembering of the fleshly part of that consequence, that aspect of it. Sure, I'm going to know you, I'm going to know all the people that we've seen, maybe even people we haven't seen, but the connection is going to be that, and it's our spiritual bond.
Right.
Now, the other part is going to be removed,
Yeah.
so the mind of the flesh, and that's what I meant by that statement, is
Right.
that part of it, and sure, I think David and Jonathan are going to have some conversations. Uriah is definitely going to have, but it's going to be on a different scale.
Right.
They're not going to be, I don't know if there will be, as you described, apologizing to one another or different things. They're going to have a connection. Like I said, husband and wife is not going to be an issue. Our minds are going to be so connected.
Yeah.
There are things we won't even need to talk about, even though we will discuss it because we're going to share. I mean,
Right.
it's a realm we really can't understand yet. We're working on it.
Yeah. Absolutely agree. Yeah. And like this situation here kind of ties into that there won't be any secrets, right? Like everybody knows about this. This is in the scriptures for everybody. And somehow, like through our hive mind, perhaps we're just aware of all of these things. We'll see. Yeah, John?
Realistically, if we look at it, if and when we take on the divine mind, if we do look back on our past, there's going to be a lot of head shaking.
Yeah.
Looking at, kind of like looking at our children, look at how they struggled with this. And I think I don't know what the answer is, how much recall there will be, but there won't be the feeling of being tied to that perspective, that mortal perspective. It will be elevated.
Yeah.
And I think regardless of how that is accomplished, were we able to, with the divine mind, look back at ourselves?
Right.
There would be, in my case, a whole lot of head shaking, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, the kingdom, like going into the kingdom, a big part of judgment is that God doesn't want anybody going into the kingdom age with any sort of pride or that I earned this or deserved it. And so when we go back over it, there'll be things in our lives that we didn't even realize we did, that they're like, oh, did you know that, this person was really, really offended when you did this or that? And it's like, oh, I didn't, now I know. Just to make us aware that, as we go into the kingdom age, these issues and we're able to help others through them. Yeah.
I don't want to waste your time. I know you need to keep going. I've always clung to that verse of there'll be no more sorrow or sighing, death or remembrance of those things. So if there's no more recall of the pain or the suffering or the tears or the difficulties, then how would these guys have these reunions and know that these things, if those former things are wiped away?
I think it maybe goes to Randy's point where we wouldn't have any sort of hatred or anger or anything in us anymore in the immortal nature. I guess I'm speculating here, but I would say that he would know about it, but there would be none of those emotions tied to it.
Uriah, you can read the Bible, but skip page 342. Yeah. I think with what Randy was saying, we're just going to have a completely different mindset. And so that the thought today of revealing my secrets, the horrible things about me to anybody just would give me a panic attack. But that's just not going to be the case because everybody's minds, the giver and the receiver of that information, is going to be different. And I think we have to have our memories in order to appreciate being in the kingdom.
Yeah.
If everything is wiped away, then
Well, that's part of why Christ, it's in Hebrews 2:14, he was made in all points like as we are, yet without sin, was so that he could be our high priest, that he could understand us. And so we as the saints need to understand the mortal population that we rule over.
And you and I were talking about this a couple of weeks ago. God lives outside of time. He created time for our benefit, if that's the right word, today. Jesus is now like God. Say Jesus lives outside of time. If we're going to be like Jesus, then we will presumably live outside of time.
Right.
And so we can see ourselves.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I agree with the sort of a combination of everything that was said. I think like having memories erased, I don't agree with that point, but I think the response to the recalling of all those events will be different, right? Because we'll all be changed. We won't have that human reaction. We won't hold grudges. We'll be able to forgive as God has forgiven. We won't have our human weaknesses, right, to overcome. So I think it'll be a different, we'll be able to react differently.
Yeah.
I've had my kids ask, why will there not be, husbands and wives in the kingdom? And, that's sort of the pinnacle of closeness and the pinnacle of communication and, being helpmates, walking towards the kingdom. Why will that not exist? And my daughter in particular, we had this conversation, and I said, well, because there's going to be such connection with every immortalized person, it will far exceed the relationship a husband and wife even have. It will be harmony, it will be love, it will be unity, it will be all the things that God has told us, and it will be an understanding between everybody who is mortalized that will far exceed any earthly relationship we might have. And it will be with everybody, everybody who has been immortalized. And I think because of that, maybe some of these things, if we can look back, they're going to be absolute non-issues.
Yeah, so just on that subject real quick, in John 17, that's that chapter where Jesus is praying to the Father before they go out to Gethsemane about the oneness, saying that they might be one, even as Father, you and I are one. And that's going to be an amazing thing to be able to plug into this each other and into God as one amazing sort of unit, as a oneness. Look forward to that. It's going to be an incredible thing. Somebody else had a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to say, we haven't really discussed the 1,000 years and then the kingdom. I think a lot of this might be happening in the 1,000 years, like the reunions and the discussions. There is still going to be marrying and there is still going to be war in the 1,000 years. So perhaps that's when all of those things are happening. And then at the end of that, everything is put behind.
Yeah.
And that is when it starts fresh.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. A lot of this can be a process. It doesn't have to be done before immortality is given. Thank you, Corinne. That's great. So we definitely have a warning to keep clean, to deal with our issues as we go along. The Apostle Paul is like a great example of what we've been discussing, where he admits openly multiple times. He says, I used to persecute the ecclesia. I would chase them around and do all these horrible things to them. I was the worst of the worst. But now I have to work hardest of anyone to make amends for that. So that's kind of the idea, that we really shouldn't leave things open-ended right now. If we do have an issue with somebody, we should really sort of go out of our way to bury the hatchet straight away. Psalm 103, as far as the east is from the west, so far has he removed our transgressions from us. I love that verse. It's, no matter what you've done, it can be forgiven. Psalm 32, blessed is he whose transgression is forgiven and his sin is covered. And so that's what we should aim to do, right? To rather than Sunday being, all right, we'll heap up all our sins through the week and wash them away on Sunday, we should really be dealing with them as we go along. And we have forgiveness of sin, and all we've got to do is ask for it. And the idea is that we try to keep ourselves clean constantly, I think, right? And that way, if Christ returns like right now we're ready to go. We're not carrying around a bag of sins or whatever with us. Revelation 7, these are they which came out of great tribulation and have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. And so we have that ability to keep ourselves clean, and so we should sort of do it, right, as a constant thing each and every day. Everyone agree with that? All right, so let's say we've had a chat with our angels, and the angels have made us aware of some things that perhaps we weren't aware of, and we're certainly feeling very humbled at this point. Now we come before the judgment seat of Christ, and there's two groups there, and you might be imagine to yourself what that might look like, particularly if we're at Sinai. Matthew 25 gives us this imagery of the two groups, and of course in Matthew 25 the whole thing revolves around in that you've done it to the least of these, my brethren, you've done it to me. And that is a hugely powerful quote, because sometimes we can get in disagreements or whatever with our brothers and sisters that person, but we have to look at them, put our Jesus glasses on and look at them and say, might as well be the Lord Jesus. How would I treat him? It's tricky to do with the flesh, right? But that's the imagery that's given to us about the judgment seat, is to how we're treating people. Comments on that?
When you were teaching them the truth, what we refer to as the truth, and I had one person ask me one time, and they're like, wow, you mean this is 24/7? I'm like, yes, it's every day of your life. Once you make a commitment to God, this is what you're going to do. You know, when you wake and you sleep, yes, it starts all over again today. And I don't think we bring this out enough during the memorial service about the two aspects of the bread and the wine, and I'll be brief on this, is that Jesus' life, his life, not just given on that cross, but his daily walk and his demonstrating who God was to us, that's the bread.
Yeah.
And then whenever he talks about the cup, he refers to it often as the cup, the wine that's in the cup. It's his blood that was shed for the remission of sins. When he says, and you just brought it a good point about do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So the forgiveness part of that bloodshed, that wine, is just what we're talking about here, is that we're supposed to do just like Jesus. Forgive others, move on.
Yeah.
Repent, be reconciled. So those are two things that I think that are the core of what you're talking about of who's your neighbor, how are you going to treat them, and that's the core, and we could talk about that for hours.
It only really dawned on me a couple of weeks ago that in Scripture, we can be given something in the positive or the negative. For example, thou shalt not steal. But the opposite of that is equally true. So like with the golden rule, do unto others as you would have others do to you. In the case of, say, Haman building the gallows for Mordecai, he ended up hung on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. And God does that continually throughout Scripture. And so those that are rejected at judgment are really just getting the results of how they've treated others, right? And so that's why it's really important to, I don't know, take this one to heart. Yeah, Casey?
I don't know whether you've noticed this before or not, but the first part of that where he's talking to the Pharisees, and he says, when you didn't do it, the least of these my brethren, you didn't do it to me. And then the flip side, and disciples, he says, when you did do it to the least of these, you did it to me. Didn't say the least of these my brethren.
Yeah, you
second
said that in
time
an
around.
exhortation recently, or
I think the meal,
Yeah.
or the RVA light.
I'd
thing.
never, the RVA light
Yeah,
thing. I'd never
yeah.
noticed that before. That was a really good point. Yeah, so Christ expects us to treat all people like this, because in the kingdom age, we're dealing with all people, right? Yeah, great point. Couple passages here.
You want me to read those?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
For if we sin willfully, after that we have received the knowledge of the truth, there remaineth no more sacrifice for sins, but a certain fearful looking for of judgment and fiery indignation, which shall devour the adversaries. He that despised Moses' law died without mercy under 2 or 3 witnesses. Of how much sorer punishment, suppose ye, shall ye be thought worthy, who hath trodden under foot the Son of God, and hath counted the blood of the covenant wherewith he was sanctified an unholy thing, and hath done despite unto the Spirit of grace?
So just on that topic, obviously, I think the worst thing anybody could do is turn around and leave the truth. And to have Christ's blood protecting you and then to turn around and stomp on it and walk in the other direction, these are the guys that are getting rejected at judgment, because it's the most horrible thing you could do, right? Romans 2.
Who will render to every man according to his deeds, to them who by patient continuance in well-doing seek for glory and honor and immortality, eternal life. But unto them that are contentious and do not obey the truth, but obey unrighteousness, indignation and wrath, tribulation and anguish, upon every soul of man that doeth evil, of the Jew first, and also of the Gentile. But glory, honor, and peace to every man that worketh good, to the Jew first, and also for the Gentile. For there is no respect of persons with God.
All right, so again, it's a pretty good little passage about the judgment and what God expects of us. And like when you break it down, I sometimes say that God's not going to give you something you don't want. Like if you don't want the truth, if you're not interested in the kingdom, God's not going to make you go there. So the people that are getting rejected here are the ones that don't want to be part of it, in my mind anyway, or that have become motivated by selfish ideas and so forth. I don't know whether we need to spend too much time on this, but certainly a lot of work of the angels going on. Those quotes in Matthew or Mark, the angels are descending, they arrive with Christ. Christ accepts or denies you in front of your angels. The angels sought the wicked from the just. The wicked are burnt in the furnace. And the Hebrews, the 3 verses at the bottom, say that their job is to minister and protect us. And so we certainly have angels with us as we go through our lives, and I sometimes think it'd be pretty amazing to meet the angel that's been by my side, and I'm out riding on my motorbike and he's there working hard to get me through it. So anyway, yeah, the angels, it's kind of fun to think of whether we'll recognize them. And so then we get to this book of life. And so I had said that perhaps as far as the book of remembrance goes, we would all have our own book, but this book of life would be a big book and all it has in there is your name. Your name's either in there or it's not. And if your name's in there, then you're going to get changed in the twinkling of an eye and given immortality. And so we all hope and pray that our names are in that book. So we don't really have too much time here, and we'll probably pick up on this in the next class, but let's begin a little conversation on what we think it might be like to be immortal and what that change might be. So 1 Corinthians 15, the resurrection chapter, tells us that this is going to happen in the twinkling of an eye or the blink of an eye. We're changed and we no longer have these mortal bodies and these fleshly minds, and that we're changed into spiritual spiritual bodies and spiritual minds. And I sometimes think about the really elderly amongst us that really are carrying a lot of aches and pains and arthritis and all the other things, and to be able to be changed in a moment and suddenly feel that immortal change, what that might be like. So comments on that, and we'll probably have to close after that. We'll pick up on this again in the next class.
I just kind of go back to what we were talking about earlier too. Like, I think the most mind-bending part of this is the transition in our minds, like letting go of the ego, the selfishness, like any greed or hang-ups that we have, just for that to be gone in an instant is crazy. The flip side that I was thinking about during all this too is God very much uses personal freedom for people to follow their journey, to come to him, to come to that truth, but also he chooses wildly complex and flawed people. So how much of that will be in their personality, but removing the sin there or removing that selfishness? It's interesting to think about. I don't know if I have a particular answer, but yeah.
Yeah, he loves the humility, right? Not looking for champions, just looking, because he can work with humble people.
We had this discussion last night about, because we're reading about idolatry in the daily reading, so we're not going to go there, but you can think about what your own definition, if you had to explain that to somebody from a scriptural standpoint, from a spiritual standpoint, what is idolatry? Define it. About the flawed people, I heard an exhortation one time, and I thought it was very revealing and daunting, is that his main point is that he thought, I agree with this, God somehow loves the people with more problems more because he has more to work with. Where, and this is being honest with ourselves, because some people say, oh, I'm fine, I've overcome, I'm ready to meet Jesus today. Well, how far have you dug in on that one? I ask myself these questions all the time. Because look at the verses where, with Peter and many other examples we have of fundamental cornerstones of our belief, about the conversion, and I believe this is a fact in my mind, is that we're converted multiple times. When we learn something, we're converted, and then he says, okay, now share it with your brethren. So this becomes a teaching model, and I think this goes right into the kingdom of what you're dealing with. Is that if we're so blessed to be immortalized and be able to be in the kingdom, one of our very important roles will be teaching the people that are living during that 1,000-year period, whatever capacity we are. Our experiences that we learned, so this is the part the memory is not erased, what we've learned from that, we will be sharing with other people to teach them how to become spiritually minded. Yeah. That's, in my mind, how God is preparing us for that age. So right now, when we are converted, when we learn a new lesson, think about it and share it with others.
Love it, Randy. Yeah, we live in a world of throwaway things, right? So something breaks, you just throw it away and go to Walmart and get another one. And the people in this world are very broken. And God, you can see the love of God in that. I like to say that he's a fixer of broken things. And Genesis 1:1 sort of says the earth was without form and void, and he comes along and makes it wonderful. We're all broken. He wants to make us wonderful. And the same thing with all of humanity. And he's very patient and willing to do that, which is great, because some people believe that God's going to destroy the world and just start again. And of course, he didn't do it with Israel. He didn't do it with Adam and Eve. And he's not going to do it with the world. He's going to work with what he's got and fix it. There was one more comment, John?
I had an experience that really stuck with me about 2 months ago during March Madness. Rebecca and I decided we had a free night and we had to drop Gracie somewhere, so we went out for dinner and we picked a place that was very close to U of R. And the place was, once we got in there, was just packed with college-age students. and they were the primary group that was in there. And I was just struck with, here are all these people that infirmity had not yet touched in any way, and they were at the height of their arrogance and beauty and power, and they were in their prime, and they were strutting around the place just nonchalantly, so arrogantly. And I thought, I hope I wasn't like that at that age. But life hadn't really touched these people yet. And I thought, there's a lesson there, because God must look at us and, shake his head, because we tend to walk through life when things are going our way with that same, sort of almost arrogance.
And aging probably helps that, right? Because if we just stayed 20 for 70 years, we'd probably be arrogant for 70 years. But when things start breaking down, it kind of humbles you, doesn't it? All right, great discussion. We'll have Stuart back next week, so he'll continue on with his mountains class. And then when he's done with that, we'll finish this class and wrap up with that. And then Brother Jason's going to lead us in a class after that. So that's the plan. We'll move in now to the section of prayers for others.